Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome to Kicker Rocks Podcast 2 Drink Minimum, episode number 3. And guess what? The gang is all here on this one. We all got together and we talked about comfort films. We figured it was close to Thanksgiving and that reminded us of comfort food. So we started to talk about the films that make us feel all warm and gooey inside. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Gentlemen, raise up your glasses. A little cheers action here.
Hey.
It's the first time we got all 5 members of Kicker Rock in the house tonight for this podcast. Sounded pretty good. This is Bill.
Joe. Tony.
Sergio.
JT.
All right. Well, we're here today to talk to you guys about our favorite comfort movies. Figure around this time of year, we think Thanksgiving, we think comfort food. And we're thinking, let's relate that to films. What are some of your comfort films that are just your go-tos that you can watch any time of the year? It doesn't matter any mood you're in. Sometimes if you're in a bad mood, maybe they make you into a better mood. Stuff like that. They make you happy, right? Things that you can quote inside and out, backwards and forwards. Some of our favorite movies, but comfort movies that you can watch any old time. And we're going to just get this started right now. Mr. Marino, Tony, what do you got for us, man? What's your go-to comfort movie?
My go-to comfort movie maybe doesn't hit the guidelines that you just spoke of. I can't exactly quote it, but speaking of comfort food and Thanksgiving and such, my comfort movie is Home for the Holidays, which is actually a Thanksgiving movie. Oddly enough, because there's not a whole lot of those. Starring roles is Jodie Foster, supported by Robert Downey Jr., who plays her brother. I guess the reason I picked it for a comfort movie is that it hits home as far as, hey, having a totally and completely dysfunctional family is completely normal and everybody deals with this on their own accord. Was one of my mom's favorite movies, so I think that's why it's a comfort. Anytime I watch it, it's sort of like relating to my parents, relating to my aunts and uncles. And I can remember one year for Christmas, my mother actually bought the DVDs for all of her siblings. One of 11, or she's one of 10 or one of 11, I believe. No, one of 9. Sorry to all my aunts and uncles right now. But yeah, it's just
They're all going to be offended.
Yeah, they're all going to listen to this and be offended. But yeah, I think that's one of my favorite comfort movies. It's just one of those ones I could put in and just kind of sit back, relax, and realize, like, yeah, maybe everybody's life isn't so picture perfect and they've got it going, but it's a great comedy. The cast is pretty star-studded. There's even a older Anne Bancroft who plays her mother, who's awesome in it. She just kills it. Probably one of my favorite Robert Downey Jr. Performances. He nails the younger, annoying brother. And yeah, just really good. Yeah.
When did this movie come out? I've never seen this.
1995, and I did a little IMDb action before the meeting. So 1995, I knew that off the top of my head, and Jodie Foster actually directed it. So yeah.
Really? Is that her directorial debut? Do you know?
I'm not sure off the top of my head, but
how old was Jodie Foster in 95? Well, she was...
I feel like she probably had something else under her belt by then.
Well, I mean, Silence of the Lambs came out when? Earlier?
That was like 90, 91.
Oh, was it 91? Okay.
I'm guessing here. I'm guessing.
Yeah. That sounds about right.
But she was in
Taxi
Taxi Driver.
She directed that, too. I never knew that.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
she did. So yeah, that's one of my go-tos.
It's a great film.
Yeah. It's fun.
It's better than Contact?
Everything's better than Contact. Although, one of my favorite quotes of all time is, what is it? Don't have the words, should have sent a poet. Like, seriously, like, not that it's a good quote, but that it cracks me up, and it's so quotable to say it, all the wrong times.
Nice.
Oh, Contact. JT, you jerk.
Excellent. Sergio, what's your comfort
It's
one?
not her directorial debut, Tony.
It's not. Oh,
It's
wait.
not. She did Little Man Tate before that, 4 years before that in 91.
We're IMDb in hardcore right now.
She Tales from the Dark Side and Stephen King's Golden Tales. She did a small one in that. So, hey, good for her.
Wow.
There you go, Jody.
I honestly didn't know that she was directing that early in her career. So
She didn't direct for like 16 years after that either, according to this.
Just a side note, what did she direct after that then? Or what was 16 years later?
The Beaver with Mel Gibson.
One episode of House of Cards, 2 episodes of Orange is the New Black, recently Money Monster,
Oh wow.
and an episode of Black Mirror from this year.
Which
Oh, wow.
that's going to be a separate podcast. If you guys aren't fans yet, holy shit, holy heck.
Black Mirror.
Oh my god, dude. It's where we're headed with technology and as a
Nice.
society. It's messed up.
Good.
show.
Good.
All right, so sorry, moving on to Sergio. Sorry about that.
It's all right. It's all right. It's a good one. It's a good one to start off with. Serge, what do you got?
Well, for me, it's an oldie. It's Casablanca.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Classic.
Yeah, it's a classic, and it was kind of torn. There's two old movies that I just go back to. One Citizen Kane and one is Casablanca, and I had to give the winner to Casablanca because I've always just really enjoyed the story, the overacting. That sounds so disrespectful.
No.
But you have to admit, like, movies from the 30s, 40s, 50s, like, it always felt like they were just overacting. But I think that's one of the beauties about old movies is they really take you away from what your reality is, and they bring you into this whole world that is completely different than anything you know. And in regards to the movie Casablanca, I just love the cinematography of it. I love the fact that it's this whole like noir, black and white, really cool aesthetic. And you have to admit, like, there's so many one-liners and just like bits and parodies and jokes that have come up in pop culture, like forever since then. It's like, how do you not know lines like "Here's looking at you, kid," or "Louis, this is going to be this looks like it's going to start a beautiful friendship," or of all the
It's my favorite line.
yeah, of all the gin joints and all the towns in all the world, she had to walk into mine.
Yes.
It's like you hear these things, and I guarantee you a lot of people don't even know, like, to them it's just a cliche, a random statement, but it's like, this was the dialogue that was used in this movie, and it's just so phenomenal, and it lasted the test of time, and you have Humphrey Bogart, just like this total, like, awesome pimp character just running this town. Nothing phases him. He owns it. He runs it. And then there's this girl that he once loved, and it was a lost love. And she enters his life again. And within days, he loses her again. When there was that glimpse of hope that they were getting back together, and he chooses to let her go.
You gotta get on that plane.
Yeah, you gotta get on that plane, and he chooses to let her go because it's the right thing to do for him, for her, for the resistance, like for everything. And it's just like it's a great story. So that's pretty much why I love that movie so much. It's just like, it's such a good thing to just go watch, enjoy, just to enjoy it. Whether it's like a rainy day or I'm just bored and I've got nothing to do, I'll just pop that in, and I could have that as like background while I'm like cleaning, or a Saturday night if I'm not doing anything, just sit down and watch it. Like, it's that good of a movie. Like, it'll capture my attention every time.
Fantastic film.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yep.
Chime in real quick. Jimmy Panatti, who actually sold us our first light,
Okay.
just went and saw Casablanca at Chicago Ridge. They were playing it there, so you got to see
That's
it
awesome.
on the on one of the original prints. They played it there, and he's like, I've never seen it on the big screen. It was just this experience, and we were talking quotes and talking things today and going through it. And it's one of those movies where I wanted to make a note where you said, like, you know, the old school Hollywood of the overacting, but I think that's sort of part of the affection towards it, where you just fall in love with that, where it's like, it's almost like, you know, Bill, you've got a theater background with the overacting, where you're on the stage and you're doing this and things are real big and this is happening, and it's like, it's almost like you're watching a play.
Yeah.
And
But
maybe
it's not
that's
film. I
it.
think
Maybe that's
that's
where
part
that
of it.
comes from.
I think that's what, because I think it's like, you know, the transition to film back then was, you know, it's like people didn't know what they were doing really.
It was that
until
learning
the
curve,
70s, you
and then
know?
it was like, oh,
That's
we're
when,
catching
like,
all this. We don't need to have it really
Yeah.
as big as it was, but I think that's part of what makes it so lovable.
Like, naturalistic acting and directing didn't really pop its head in until like the late 60s
Yeah.
and 70s. Whereas
That's
like
a good
back
point.
in the day, it was like more like film was an extension of the stage, you know?
Yeah,
So it's
and
like
that's what it was,
watching
right.
a play with elaborate sets and stuff like that, you know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that approach. It's just like, that's just how they did it at the time, because it's, you know, it was a
Everyone was
new
learning.
medium,
It was
you
new,
know?
right? Real quick, one more thing with Jimmy. The Here's Looking at You kid. He was telling me he was watching a doc on that, and but Bogart and Ingrid Bergman.
Bergman, yeah.
When they were in between takes or taking breaks, they play cards together. And they play cards with this. And they play cards with the guys on set. And she was always getting called and always losing. And he says, "How are they doing that?" And he's telling her, he said, "Here's looking at you. He's looking at you. You have a tell." And that's where the line, he put it in there.
Oh, I hope that's true.
Of the here's looking, Jimmy, we talked about this like 2 weeks ago, and he's like, that's where the line, "Here's looking at you, kid," came from, was basically, you've got a poker tell, he's looking at you, he can see that you've got nothing or you've got something or whatever. So I thought that was
great.
interesting.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, that is great.
It was cool. So you brought that up, so. Yeah.
No, that's fine. JT?
There's kind of like two like requirements to like make it to my little comfort list, I guess, because I got like a bunch of them. I'm kind of just picking one like that's near the top, I got to be able to draw or paint to it, Like it's like, it's got to be something I could just have on in the background that gets me through an art session or something, And then oftentimes it's something from like my childhood, because I like all of my favorite movies, most of them are from the 80s, And like, it's like there's certain movies I grew up with that I loved as a 4-year-old, and then I loved as a 10-year-old, and then I loved as a 15-year-old, 20, 25, all the way up, and always for different reasons. Like you'll unlock layers to them that you didn't know were there.
Yeah.
Like, and stuff like that. Anyway, my pick is The Blues Brothers.
Nice
Great.
pick.
I love that movie
Great.
Yeah.
so much, and I just watched it 2 days ago while drawing, actually.
Nice. Nice.
But it's great because it's like, it was John Landis, right? He directed that. I know he wrote it.
I think you're right, yeah.
You
pretty
keep
sure you
talking and I will IMDb.
It's just that like his stuff, like especially starting with Animal House, there's such a grandiosity to his comedy. It's like just because it's a comedy doesn't mean it has to be shot for $20. Like it makes it look like it was shot for $20. And makes it look like just like artless garbage of people just talking back to each other in a 2-shot. It's like every frame of that movie is a painting. Like when they're walking up the steps with Jesus on the left and like them on the right, you know what I mean? And just like the weird like Tim Burton-y kind of angle that it's on.
Yeah.
And just like the opening shots of like the East Side, and like all that stuff. Like, it's just like every time you look at any frame of that movie, it's A, iconic in a pop culture sense, and B, like masterfully directed. It's just like the two of them meeting each other in the beginning when like the music is starting to play and they're staring at each other, and then it just goes to white background. They hug. It comes out of the white background back to reality. And that's a fun aspect of that movie too. Is that like it was like existed in a time where comedy didn't always have to be so grounded. It was like ridiculous shit could happen. Like Naked Gun and Airplane and stuff like that. But it wasn't like anything goes like that. But it was like just a smidgen of like cracking in reality when like
You're talking about like the Nazis just.
The Nazis.
Come on.
well, that stuff's kind of
That's
based in
right,
reality.
No, I get that, but like the caravan of Nazis
Oh, yeah.
tracking them, or like
Right.
the chase scene.
See, but that's even in a sense kind of grounded. But then when he flies off the unfinished interstate, and they're like they're like hundreds of stories in the air.
Yeah. It didn't even make sense.
Smashed
Geographically, if you know Chicago, it's like, this doesn't make sense.
There's a deleted scene from
Gravity
the movie that's
isn't making sense here.
in the director's cut or ever, where they like park it's the no scene where they're like showing back up at his dingy apartment, Dan Aykroyd's apartment, like the car like it's like parks in like this weird garage with like this like power overload thing like near it, so it was like like they were saying like that's what's supposed to like have given the car powers later in the movie to be able to do stupid shit like do a backflip in the air and land on its feet.
Oh, that's awesome. And it was funny, you brought up earlier when you said that, like the whole, when they go to the nun's house and they're looking up the stairs and all that stuff, like doesn't he, like, John Landis, even does that cool effect with the nun, like, just sliding up in the camera, like that, like, just like that weird, like, she's not walking, it's just like,
Don't come back until you redeem yourself, and then she like floats backwards.
yeah, that one.
The doors are opening by themselves.
Which I feel like that's like that comedic element that you're talking about, where it's like totally out of reality and just bringing you into this, like, weird, interesting world of like,
and it's
these characters
a long
are just
movie.
like
There's a lot of space in that movie. They take their time, and like it feels good. Like it doesn't feel like you're being dragged through it. It feels like
You're not waiting and
it's like-
wanting.
Yeah.
You're just enjoying
You're
it. And
enjoying
taking
it.
It's like it's like comedy, like butting up to like a weird, interesting musical because you get all these great like musical elements, like Aretha Franklin showing up inside that one, like that whole scene where he goes to pick up the saxophone player. I forget the character's
music
name.
is amazing.
Yeah, it's
every song hits, every
Exactly.
single dance scene hits and stuff.
Yep.
For sure Landis, and then Aykroyd and Landis wrote it.
Yes, it did. And then was it Ramis and Landis? I think wrote Animal House, but what was it? Yeah, what's great about that movie is that like. I love Ferris Bueller. It's on my top 5, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But like that's more like the touristy kind of like hoity-toity kind of side of Chicago, you know, which is fine. That's great.
Yeah.
You know, like you're going on top of Zeus Tower, you're in the art museum, you're at a game at Wrigley Field, but in Blues Brothers, you get to see a little more like the urban grit of
Lower
Chicago.
Wacker Drive.
Yeah,
Yeah, Lower
Car
Wacker.
Chase and Lower
Old-
Wacker.
old Maxwell
Street.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like you get to see all these like just I don't know. It's just
I wouldn't call it
fucking-
seedy side. I'd call it the seasoned side of
Yeah.
Chicago. Like that's the tasty side of it. It's,
Right.
Good point.
it's not. Yeah.
It's the real side.
So and like the East Side bridges and stuff like there's like
Yeah.
certain stuff in that movie that's just like I don't know. It feels very grounded. So it's like I think it's the best Chicago movie ever made. And like
I borderline. I will like almost agree with that too
Yeah.
because it's like it's such a great. It's such a great Chicago movie, particularly in that era.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you watch the movie Cooley High. Anyone see the movie Cooley High? Mm-mm. Oh my God, it's such a fun.
Is that Chicago?
Yeah, it's
and we're
Chicago.
gonna save that for the next
and it's
podcast.
a Southside Chicago
the
movie.
best movies ever made in Chicago.
Yeah, and it's like it's one of those things where it's like one thing. The reason why I like the older Chicago movies like that because you have Cooley High, you have Blues Brothers, even like the intro to Good Times, like that TV show was set in Chicago. You just get this like, it's nice to see these like interesting like B-roll footage of like all of like old Chicago, and all of us being from Chicago. I think it's really cool to see like old footage of what like old Chicago used to look like because now obviously like gentrification and buildings and like everything's just like taking over everything. It's like, oh wow, that's what Chicago looked like in the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Right.
So it's like that's why I like watching old movies
that's
too.
kind of funny to watch Stranger Things too, and you see Chicago in the
Yeah.
background in that one shot, and you're like, oh, that's modern Chicago.
Yeah. Well, not even.
Yeah, they dropped the ball.
Yeah.
They definitely like it looked like they clearly they either shot it so you couldn't see it or they just completely blanked out Trump Tower though.
Did they
Oh,
really?
that's a good point.
It's not in there at all.
There was
I was looking for it. I'm like, I think it should be right there.
Not to
But,
be jumping on like the Stranger Things conversation thing, but like yeah, and like all of the what made me laugh about the skyline shots that they used.
They
in that
tried.
Show,
They
yeah,
tried.
they tried. But here it was unrealistic, which I know where you lose yourself in what you're watching, and like that's the idea of like films and TV shows. But then I'm looking at the one footage where they show the Chicago skyline, and it's like from the perspective of like the water to the skyline, but yet they're in like a warehouse,
Right.
and it's like that's not even
That's
possible.
nowhere near the
That's like
water.
that's like a warehouse in the middle of Lake
Lake
Michigan.
Michigan.
Like, that doesn't make sense.
No.
That
Yeah.
doesn't
that
make
was,
sense.
that was I had the same thought instantly.
Right?
Too. Like,
Yeah.
But to somebody who doesn't live here,
Yeah,
Right.
you're just like, oh, that's great. Let's
It
Chicago
doesn't bug me
skyline.
as bad as the video game Watch Dogs though. That was like it was like part of Chicago.
Oh, didn't they
got
make
dropped in the middle
Chicago
of
Manhattan
Pennsylvania.
almost?
Yeah, there were like mountains in the distance. It was
Yeah,
like,
dude. I
this is
never
a
played it, but I
place, you
saw
fuck.
screen grabs and I was like, why does Chicago look like an island right now? It looks like Manhattan. There's water.
Yeah, there
everywhere.
was. Yeah, on all sides.
It was like I
was
get that
weird.
there's a river, but this is
Yeah.
we're completely
Yeah,
surrounded.
where like the Roosevelt stop would be on the south side, like there's water, it's underwater. Anyway, two more quick points about Blues Brothers I want to make is that like, it's Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi are known for being like really like, out there with their comedy, like very loud, and I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, flamboyant even at times, or just like taking it to 11.
Almost
And it's-
exaggerated. if you
Yeah,
will.
yeah, and it's so cool in that movie to know that they had the good sense to keep them to reel it in, that like the two of them hardly emoted through most of it, and like kept it like a little more like dignified humor or something, or just like street level humor or something, where it was just like they'd talk in short bursts and don't smile that much,
Dude, can you imagine them over the top in that?
I know,
It
it would.
But
It would've killed it.
one exception is the band. The band! Backflips.
Oh yeah. I mean, they're still performers.
That was intentional at that point, but yeah.
But other than that, absolutely, it's a lot
But
more.
if he was
subtle.
on like cop breaks, cop shocks, you know, like if he was just like saying it like that. But and what's great is that like because they established those characters in such a way, like as like so grounded and funny, it's like the ridiculous stuff I was talking about earlier. Like every time if they like jump through something and they're like, "How did we survive? How did the car do that?" They just kind of look at they give each other a quick glance. Like kind of like what you know, like almost like did that just happen, you know, like without moving their faces, like they just kind of slowly look at each other like, oh that just happened, all right, let's keep going, you know. Like they're almost like oblivious to the crazy stuff that happens around them. And then it's like the one more point is that a lot of film critics have said like that's the reason Ghostbusters is so strange that it works, is that like a lot of times big budgets and comedy don't mix, you know what I mean? Like the Get Smart movie or something, it's like they had too much visual effects going on and not enough time joking around, so it's like you gotta have one or the other usually.
Yeah.
Blues Brothers and Ghostbusters are like movies that kind of like walk that tightrope perfectly, you know, because it's like it's still hilarious and you have like the most insane car chase ever put to film, like almost
Yeah,
maybe ever.
definitely top 5 for sure.
I remember reading how like it was like an old, wasn't it like an
an
the
old
car chase
mall.
inside the mall? It was like an
Yeah.
old mall on the south side, like Country Club Hills or something.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know
Where it
the
was about to
specific-
be an old mall.
Yeah, or not Country Club Hills. It was something with a C. Anyways, but yeah, like they literally had cars inside the mall driving around, trashing the place. Like, yeah, that's you spend a lot of money and do a lot of planning and bring in a lot of extras with like rehearsing and making sure that's right to do something like that. And that's, I don't know, that's just awesome.
You can
Like you
still
said,
do
the
it.
car chases are amazing.
There's like still stuff I noticed in that movie sometimes after watching it a number of times where it's like you remember when the cop car tipped over in the mall and he's like, "You broke my watch." Like later on in the movie, like a whole bunch of cars like fly off of 55 or wherever they're driving.
55, I believe.
And like you could just hear one of them like in the background while they're all just in commotion, like just going, "You broke my watch," you know. Like,
Dixie Square Mall in Harvey.
Harvey, that's
Harvey.
No
Harvey.
shit, man.
Yeah.
Not far from the Heights, guys.
Not far from the Heights.
I just
Yeah.
Anyway, I've talked enough about it, but I love Blues Brothers.
Nice. Yeah, me
No,
too.
it's great.
Yeah,
It's
There's a lot to talk
definitely-
about that one. I mean,
What's up?
the mall was closed already.
Yeah.
fantastic movie. Am I up?
Yeah.
Sure.
Cool. So mine is I love a lot of this person's movies, and it was tough to just pick one. I'm gonna go with Mel Brooks, one of my favorite filmmakers, and I'm going with Young Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Is one of my favorite movies of all time, and definitely just one that is a comfort one for me. It can be on, like you were saying, JT, it could just be on in the background, and I'm comfortable with it. I can be doing whatever else I'm doing, and if that's on, I'll still chime in, you know, when it's those my favorite parts or whatever, my favorite lines come up. And I think it's one of those, it's in the 70s, I want to say 73, 74, I think 74, when it was made. The humor in that movie still holds up to me this day. I could watch it right now and I would still, even though I know what's coming, I could still laugh.
100%.
at it.
Every
And
time.
that's why it's definitely, it falls in that comfort area for me, because no matter how long it's been since I've seen it, it still makes me laugh. It's still funny to this day. And I love parody. And I think that's one of Mel Brooks's perfectly, like, he does stay true to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, that story, and puts, you know, and him and Gene Wilder, I believe, wrote the script for it together. And they put their own spin on it as well to make it, you know, his grandson, Frankenstein, right? Frederick Frankenstein. So that, to me, you know, and to have it stay true to that story where he finds his grandfather's old work and it's in black and white, you know, and the studio was against that. You can't do it in black and white, and Mel fought it, and you know, there's a story where he said, okay, well, if it's not in black and white, I'm not going to make it, you know, and so they said, okay, do it in black and white, and you know, it was that's how it should be. It totally stays true to that old school horror movie, monster movie genre of the Frankenstein story. And it's just so funny, and it's back what you're saying, like now a lot of modern comedies are a lot of two shots of people talking, right? It's not that they're not funny, but there is something to be said for the visual gags, where something's just shot funny, how things enter the frame in that movie is funny. I mean, I remember that's one of the first times, like one of my favorite visual gags in that film is, it's one of the first times I saw, kind of like similar to a Cowboy Switch, where Igor is up on top. They're doing the experiment, and he's saying, he's yelling. I can't think what he's yelling. He's like, he's yelling at him, "Come down here!" He's like, "What? Come down here!" Something like that, and then what? And then he, yells it out, and then all of a sudden Igor appears like right next to him. He's like, "Why are you yelling?" or whatever. He's like, "How did you?" And then they just ignore it, But it's one of those visual gags that alone makes you laugh. And then there's a lot that happens in that movie. A lot of it's that Mel Brooks style of humor where it's a lot of play on words. Igor, will you grab the take the bags or whatever? Yeah, sure. You take the blonde and I'll take the one in the toy bin or whatever. Right? It's just stuff like that where it's just so good.
My favorite is still just such huge knockers.
Yes. What knockers? Oh, thank you, Doctor. Yeah.
Oh, I think one of mine is
werewolf.
Roll in the hay.
Roll in the hay.
Oh, it's so stupid. Right. It's just so great.
Where he stabs himself at the beginning in the thigh. I'm interested in the preservation of life. And then he looks at it, and then he has to go, class dismissed or whatever. He pulls it out.
But even the walk this way.
Yeah.
Yes. No, this way.
It's the most simplest
Yeah.
stupid pun cliche thing, but it's just like,
Oh yeah.
I just love that. That's you're right. All of the play on words in that movie. Is great.
Marty Feldman as Igor it's one of the funniest performances in movie. I think that, in my opinion, that I'd rank that up there. He's hysterical in that movie, and everybody in that movie is. You got that's the thing too. That's stacked with just great comedic actors. I mean, you got Gene Wilder, obviously.
Tons of talent. Right?
You got Marty Feldman, right? You've got Madeline Kahn. You got Cloris Leachman, young Cloris Leachman, playing Frau Blucher. Right? Who's oh my gosh, I'm losing names. Help me out here. Who's the monster? Peter Boyle. Thank you, Peter Boyle. Gene Hackman makes a.
He's the
blind man. Yeah,
that's right. He's in the blind man's house. What do we call that?
Right.
Is that what it is? And he's a youngster in it, right? Well, young enough.
Right, and then Terry Garr as Inga, right, and Kenneth Mars as the inspector. To the lumberyard. It's just there's a lot of just everything in that movie makes me laugh to this day. So that's one of my favorite ones. I love Mel Brooks movies in general as a rule, but that's just one. Any time of year, any time of day, that's a good one I like to have on. So.
He's great. I love his movies. Blazing Saddles is probably my favorite movie.
Blazing Saddles is up there as well. Yeah, we could have a Mel Brooks podcast. Trust me.
That
could just happen, but that still might happen. But for now,
followed
we'll
by
leave it with
Monty
Young
Python.
Frankenstein. Yeah, it was tough to choose. I'm
a nostalgic guy, so first Mel Brooks for me was Spaceballs.
Spaceballs.
So that's I land on that as being my favorite.
Honestly, I think that's what it was between. For this, if I had to pick favorite Mel Brooks movie. Young Frankenstein is my favorite, but a very close second is Spaceballs for me. Yeah, for sure. I
don't know. I think Blazing Saddles is before Spaceballs for me.
It's tough.
This is another.
We can have
Sorry.
a debate. But it's good. But it's good. Anyway, to stop this debate now, we'll save it for later. Mr. Joe Mono in his 2-drink minimum debut.
Well, it's good to be here, fellas.
Wrap it up for us, man. Wrap it up for us. What do you got?
I'm actually part of the team or something. This is outstanding.
You were missed. You were definitely missed. We're glad you're
You sure about that?
Well,
I don't know about that.
It's something to say. There's something nice to say.
I missed your scent.
It's a musk. It's more of a musk.
It is a musk.
It is, yeah. It's
All
an
right.
enchanting musk.
Anyway,
What do you got for us, man?
so I did kind of like some of you guys had mentioned. I kind of had a challenge on picking one. Even sitting here just now, I was like, God, which one am I going to go with? Because I have a bunch of movies, especially the ones I think we all have that if it's on, you'll sit and stop what you're doing and watch it, kind of thing. So I had stuff like that, like Goodfellas and Tombstone, and even The Rock. are with
Wow,
are
yeah.
movies like that for me.
That's a good one.
Michael Bay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
That-
three
I
of
do
those, all
like
three of
that.
those right now. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah,
those are
you see,
great.
so, but what I wanted to go with here then, I ended up narrowing it down to two choices, both of which I think were introduced to me by Mr. Sergio Torres once upon a time.
Huh.
Both 2004 releases, as a matter of fact.
Wow.
The one I didn't go with,
Can I try to guess one?
sure.
Good year for you. 2004.
Yep.
Fucking knew it. Sorry. Ugh, trying to.
Well, yeah, well,
I
think
darn
you,
well knew it.
I think you know that about
Oh, you
me,
can-
though.
Well, I knew about you, but also
God,
he's the
I love
reason I
that
watched that.
Yeah.
Sorry, not to
So
chime
the
in.
one I didn't
Sorry,
go
Joe.
with was that one, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless
You
Mind.
didn't go with it, you
Didn't
said?
go with it.
Okay.
But I'm glad I influenced you guys to go and watch that movie.
That's enough credit for
Honestly,
you.
Phenomenal.
Honestly, made a decision not to go with it sitting here
Oh.
because I feel like I have less to say about why that movie draws me in like that because I don't really know exactly why. I'm not like the movie buff like you guys are. I'm not going to talk about the cinematography and all this
very
other
human.
stuff.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes, and that's kind of where it ends for me. You know what I mean? And I like the story of like not, you know, making this like you want to. They mean to change their mind and then fought through it. You know, to get what they wanted. I guess at the end. You know,
Yeah.
in a very different way, of course. But so the one I did go with is Garden State.
Ooh.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, hold on. I forgot that both of those came out in the same year.
Right.
Wow. That was a
Well,
good
'cause
year.
Both the first one that Zach Braff directed?
Yes.
Is that his?
So one, yeah, he wrote it and directed it.
Yeah.
And I it's also where I fell in love with Natalie Portman.
Yeah.
I don't
Oh,
think I.
one nerd didn't.
Right,
That movie,
right.
damn.
I just loved her character in that movie, and I don't think I've ever like loved her as much as I did in Garden State.
She's adorable.
But at the time that I first watched it, which was probably about 2005, even after it had come and gone, and I think you might have even given me the DVD at the time, Sergio, to watch it for
Probably.
the first time.
Probably.
It was like it just hit home for so many different reasons because he was about his mid-20s at the time, and that's where I was when that came out. And it was just about to me, it's just like it's kind of a coming of age, but an adult version of that. Like he's accepting change. He hadn't been home in 9 years, and it like he comes home and the whole life is everything's changing and different, and he lost his mother, and and he's been dealing with like mental health issues and stuff like that, which to me have movies that pertain to that or things that pertain to that do hit home because I have experienced that some in my personal life, not me per se personally, but friends and family around me. So
It's relatable. It's
Yeah.
something where it's
Very
like, oh,
relatable.
I know this feeling. It's
There
cool
was-
to know that somebody else has felt this.
right, and it always just made me feel good, and it got me thinking about a lot of things in my own life at the time.
It's like almost therapeutic.
Well, one thing I did like about that movie is that, and it didn't draw a lot of attention to itself. It's just something you had to pick up on. Is that, forgive me if I'm misremembering because I've only seen it once, but Zach Braff's character was like, he was kind of doped up on, like
yeah, he was.
Yeah.
That was the whole.
yeah,
thing.
like
He was
in the
on-
beginning, and then it's like he was weaning himself off of it.
and he stopped taking him because he didn't like how he felt.
Right,
when he was
and
on him.
I just like that you see the transition in Zach Braff's performance. Because he's very subdued at the beginning, and then like you see, it's a gradual change in his performance into like a much more outgoing and loud person.
There's
towards
a
the end.
great actual monologue he does. I want to say it's about midway through the film where he hasn't taken his medication and they're at a party and they're sitting by a fire. They had just gone in the pool. And he's talking. It's him and Natalie Portman, and they're talking. And he tells a story about why he got on the meds in the first place, and it was because his mom got paralyzed. And I'm gonna paraphrase the monologue, but there's one line in particular at the end that I always thought was just great. There was the dishwasher at their home, as he says, had a latch that was like malfunctioning or whatever.
And that's where his mom.
The plastic latch, right? So he closed the dishwasher because his mom or dad always told him keep the dishwasher closed. So he closed the dishwasher. The latch on it didn't lock this time, and it flipped open, and that's where his mom tripped on it, and that's how she became paralyzed. And he's been on meds ever since, and he has this like epiphany, this realization, and in the like at the end of the monologue, he's like, "Fucking latch." He goes, "It's amazing how much of my life has been determined by a 1/4-inch piece of plastic."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
That
that's
line's
good.
Right.
that line's
a great
fucking
line.
great. I love that line, and that makes you realize like, wow,
Yeah.
This guy was that he had no idea what
Well, as a kid,
could have happened.
it's guilt,
That
guilt.
that incident
Right.
happened because that one
I mean,
piece of plastic
that whole incident,
changed his whole life.
that whole incident got him sent
Yeah.
off to like
And
boarding school, and
and the
then
one-
he never
yeah.
he never came home after that for
And
9 years.
the one element about that whole thing is like it's because he pushed his mom. I don't know if you remember that element. He got in a fight with his
pushed
mom,
his-
and he
he pushed
pushed
his
her,
mom, and
and
the-
she tripped over the
Because the thing
door
had flipped
because
over.
it
Oh.
flipped
Flipped open.
Yeah,
He felt
Right.
guilty, and that's why.
and that's why he felt so guilty is because he pushed his mom.
Right.
But and that's a really good point. All three of you guys are bringing up really good points, which makes me think about like. And I don't know if I'm jumping off on too much of a tangent here, but that's one thing I love about film because film the year that it's made, it's automatically putting a stamp or a seal on like, hey, that's what life is during that time. So that's why I like watching old movies, particularly, because like it's like kind of gives you a window at like what like not exactly what it was, but it's like kind of gives you an idea of what was going on at that time. Which that's what I love about film because you think about that movie, it does say a really interesting statement about what life is in the 2000s and even now, because it's like elements of. And you said it right away, Joe. Where it's like it's kind of a coming of age, even though he's in his 20s. But the reality that we live in now, we like most people don't really figure things out. They're not figuring things out at 15, 16 years anymore. It's like people are living with their parents, you know,
they're
in their
mid-
20s, you know, for a long
I gotta
time.
chime in.
And it's just like. Hold on, let me finish this. It's like it gives a good statement about like this is really how like life is these days. You know, it's like people are going to the doctor and getting drugged up unnecessarily and having to do things that they don't normally would want to do. But it's like that's the world we're living in right now, and it's a really interesting perspective. And it's like you guys are all naming really good points. It is that idea of it's the plastic or it's showing what a character can do when he's drugged up on meds that he's prescribed in the beginning of the movie to
By
how
his
he
father.
changes by his father and how he changes at the end, and then also just the simple fact that it's like it hits home to a lot of us because
Right.
we've all experienced things that this character is experiencing, and it's like we all can really relate to it.
Right, even like the turn I guess it takes to like with him between him and his father. Like they have this really like messed up relationship, and his father's a psychiatrist and whatever, and he goes to see that other doctor about like his little lightning bolt flashes, and I think the other doctor says something about
It's
like
messed up that he's
that's-
seeing
that
his doctor.
Your doctor
is your dad. Yeah.
like and
Yeah.
and and then that relationshiip eventually does kind of shift later. When he's talking to his dad again, he's just like, I just want to be me,
Yeah.
and
Which is like to me that movie's got two amazing monologues. It's the one that you mentioned with Natalie Portman, and then the second one is the one where he sits there with his dad,
dad.
and he has that conversation like that like literally like a 3 to 5 minute speech that he makes to his dad. Like you're just like you're
Yeah.
sucked into the storyline, and you're really paying attention to what he has to say because it's just like. It's him realizing everything that's gone on up to this point, and he just knows that it needs to be different.
right. And
So.
okay, and my favorite line actually out of the whole thing, that after all this we've talked about these monologues and everything else, it's one of her lines, actually. Like he says, like fuck this hurts, and she says, I know it hurts. That's life. If nothing else, it's life. It's real, and sometimes it fucking hurts, but it's sort of all we have. Like it was that was like. Wow. Okay. And I think that can say a lot to a lot of people. Everybody that's, the woe is me crowd. Like, oh, my life sucks. I got to do this.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? This is what you have. This is it. It's what you live with it. And if you want to change it, you change it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, so again, it was to like circle back. I guess like it was just one of those, like you said, therapeutic, Tony. Like you said at the time, and like it just. Yeah, it just makes me feel pretty good these days. So
It's a good pick. That's a good pick.
I want to chime in real quick with that.
Oh, sorry, I cut you
Mentioned,
off.
no, because I cut you off. You mentioned that it's the coming of age, but it's in his 20s, and that's how things were back then or are. And that, can I ask a personal question? Like, does anyone feel like they've got it all together yet? And have learned
Absolutely
everything?
not.
exactly.
Okay.
No.
You're right.
Still 35, married, have a house with my wife, completely winging it right now and don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
Like, does anyone else feel that way? Like, honestly?
I do.
Yeah.
I do, and I'm not
You don't
I'm
feel like you're winging it?
37 and not married.
Oh no, I feel like I'm winging it
Oh, okay.
every day.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't think I've got it.
Because I feel like when you're
down.
younger, and this is probably off topic a bit, but it has to do with this movie. So it's like, I feel like when you're younger, you feel like when you're 10, you're like, oh, when I'm in my 20s, that's an adult. And then when you're in your 20s, you're like, I haven't figured anything out yet. When I'm 30s, I'm going to have my stuff together.
Yeah.
And now that I'm in my mid 30s, I'm like, is this what we just do? We just keep winging it until, like,
Maybe.
you think, like, because I feel like, I don't know. I'm not having kids, so I don't know what it's going to be like to be a parent. But, like, I often wonder, like, are my parents just winging it this whole time? And I just thought the whole time that they really had it together and had an idea.
Yeah, no, that's
And that's life, right? Like, everyone's just sort of figuring it out.
yeah.
The big
Right.
secret you don't find out until you're there.
You don't ever find out.
Right. And,
You're never there.
you know, and it,
Coming of age.
Like another cool thing about it is
When?
it actually is like pretty funny too in various
God,
parts.
yeah.
You know, like, and even that whole journey they go on to
Yeah.
get his mother's necklace, like
Yeah.
that whole thing, and Albert's Abyss and all that. You know, and
And there's some absurd things that happen too.
absolutely.
Like there's, I want to say it's an early sighting at least, if not a debut. I don't think it's a debut, but it's an early sighting of Jim Parsons from The Big
Yeah.
Bang Theory.
And he's the knight.
in the night costume.
because he works at medieval
Who
times.
speaks Klingon and everything.
Right,
Oh,
and he's
it's
sleeping
great.
with the other guy's mom, and
Yeah. By the way,
It's that
you
quirky-
have the word balls.
It's that
written on your
quirky-
forehead.
balls written on your forehead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so
It's that
good.
quirky attitude like that.
Right.
Yeah.
That was just great.
Plus,
Plus I was gonna say, like, it also, that movie, I feel, kind of introduced mainstream music to the Shins.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. The soundtrack for that
yeah,
movie
that soundtrack was
the
pretty
soundtrack
amazing. I
is
feel like
fantastic.
I feel like after that, like, you couldn't get enough. Like, people were just like the Shins crazy
Right.
after that movie. So
Right.
good picks all around. If anything, just made me want to watch
all these movies.
these movies again because there were some great points brought up.
So that's what we're doing after
but
this.
But this category, I think, this might be what we're doing after this.
Watching
this
movies.
category is so. It was tough. I think we all kind of said that before we started talking. It's tough to pick just one, right? So really quick, just because I think we had a little bit more time, let's do one really quick round the robin here.
Ooh.
Of just an honorable mention that didn't get said yet. That maybe you were between. Maybe we already said it. That's fine, but honorable mention. I'll start it off because I think it deserves a shout out. Stand by Me is another one.
Ooh,
and the reason for that, really quick, is because I used to watch it when I was younger, and I still watch it now, and it's changed. I think maybe JT said something about this earlier, where I watch it differently now. I see things that I didn't when I was in grammar school, and now I watch that coming of age tale, and it just means something a little bit different. It's a little more nostalgia to it now, right? Like when you're younger, you're like, oh, you want these kids to, make that journey, run across those tracks, beat Ace, right? Find that body, and now you're watching and you're like, wow, there's so much more. Like, man, that's growing. You grow up with the movie, I think, and it's still there's something about it that still holds true, and maybe part of that's because of the narrator. Richard Dreyfuss does that great narration throughout that film as the older Will Wheaton character, Gordy. And maybe there's something to that where you relate more to the kids when you're younger, and you relate more to the narrator when you're older watching it. I'm not sure, but that's
good
definitely
point.
one that I think is one of my favorite films of all time. And
It holds up so
I
well,
love
too.
it. Yeah,
You
I
can
love
watch it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Tony, honorable mention?
All right. Picked Home for the Holidays for the first one for personal reasons and links to family and stuff. So for another feel good or one that I could put on all the time, I'm put on the spot right now.
That's why I did this.
The Professional.
Ooh.
Professional. Oh.
Another Natalie Portman.
A young Natalie Portman.
Yeah. She showed her acting chops in that.
She's incredible.
Oh, phenomenal.
Luke Besson.
Yep.
Great director. Still haven't seen his new one, Valerian.
I haven't
is
seen
it
it.
Valerian? It's the new one he has out.
Like that, yeah.
The
Valerian.
Professional. Just I love the story. I love the characters. Oh my God, who plays the villain? I can't.
Gary Oldman.
Oldman that's actually one of my favorite villains of all time.
Everyone?
At any given point, if that's on, I'm watching it. At any given point, if I have nothing to do, I'm not watching it. But that's one of those ones that I could watch at all times. It's quotable. The cinematography's great. The acting's absolutely incredible. Watching Natalie Portman perform as well as she did as a child. It's just fucking awesome.
Yeah,
Like,
agreed.
It's a great movie. The writing's great, the acting's great, the directing's great. That's just that's one of my favorites.
Fantastic.
All right, and Bill's pointing at me to bring in Sergio. So Sergio,
Well,
honorable
Take
mention.
my beer.
I said it earlier. Hands down, Citizen Kane. I feel like these are such textbook. Like you go to take a film class, you're gonna hear Casablanca, you're gonna hear Citizen Kane. But I totally give props to Citizen Kane because this is one of those moments where like I think about my age and I'm 41. You're saying you're 35, Tony. I'm 41, and I think Orson Welles, Citizen Kane, he wrote, directed it. He was 24. And I think about the stuff that I did at 24. Like, he had already, at 21, did War of the Worlds on a radio station in New York and got huge props for it, even though it caused a bunch of chaos. But then he jumps off of doing War of the Worlds and then writes an amazing script and creates an amazing film at 24 years old, which cinematically, he had new lenses created in order to create some of the effects of like someone like focused in the foreground, focused in the background. He did special lighting tricks, special different camera angles to show the dominance of somebody looking down on a character and a character looking up on a character. He actually had people create sets that would split open so when a camera's on a dolly moving forward would create this cool intro effect into like a bar scene. Like that's
Pioneer.
that's a visionary at 24 years old just saying I'm going to do this totally different than anybody has ever done anything and it's going to be a phenomenal film. And I have to give him credit. Like that movie's amazing. And if it I think like it won like #1 film for the past 100 years and like so many times. I don't know if it is now like in this year.
It's
AFL
always
top
in the
100.
top 10,
Yeah,
though.
yeah, it's always in top
10.
10 because like cinematically and for his age, what I was doing at 24, oh my god, I was the laziest piece of crap.
At 24, we were all watching Garden State trying to figure out what to do with our lives.
Exactly. So like, and here's like a genius, like
I
changing Hollywood at 24 years old. So that's why I say Citizen Kane 100%.
Good call.
My
And
second,
with
my
Orson
second
Welles,
choice.
like he gets that. You've heard the criticism multiple times where he was full of himself and very pompous human being. That's probably why. Wouldn't you
I don't
be?
know, yeah, I don't know.
You made Citizen Kane.
Yeah.
I could be a little full of
What
myself.
auteur isn't?
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So,
Exactly.
Great pick.
All right, and JT, let's hear your runner-up.
Honestly, the one I always go to, like just like default is the Indiana Jones trilogy.
Oh,
but everybody,
Trilogy, too.
but everybody knows why they're awesome. So I'm just gonna go with one of my other picks, which is The Big Lebowski.
Nice.
I can watch the movie fucking any time of any day.
Yes.
I just love that movie. It's like it was funny because at the time it was like the Coen Brothers movie that was after Fargo, so it was almost like the sophomore slump. You know what I mean? Because it was like a lot of people were expecting like, oh no, they're back. You know, what
yeah.
have they got for us? And it's just this irreverent
Yeah.
screwball, go nowhere, no moral,
Yeah.
stupid story.
Oh yeah.
Then it's like
It's so awesome.
it's just it's like all the best cult classics are just a collection of scenes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like a lot of times there really isn't an act 2, 1, 2, and
Yeah.
3. It's just like, oh, there's a scene, and they're all great. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
the kind of thing that resonates with you for a cult comedy or a cult movie. And the same way that I like Blues Brothers for being like a gritty street level version of Chicago, that's like a gritty street level version of LA.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Because it's like, it's like in Iron Man 3, it's like, oh, there's a terrorist attack at the Chinese theater or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, who cares? But like, and it's like, yeah, because that would happen exactly there. Like in Big Lebowski, it was like just, like a burnt out, like, because it takes place in the early 90s, made in the late 90s, but it's just like, so it's like the culture of like the hippies and the 70s and the surfers and the punks and all that stuff is like, you see them as like wastoid 40-something-year-olds,
Yeah.
So it's like you get to just watch like the 60s and 70s culture just like be apartment dwelling slobs that go bowling and shop at Ralph's and
I kind of want a Caucasian. Right
eat
now.
it in and out burger.
You have any clue?
You can have that, man.
Eat it in and out burger.
Caucasian, man.
Just kind of slump around, and just shit happens
Oh, yeah.
around them. And,
to chime in and bring up Jim Panatti again. He's got a friend who was in a film school, and this, that, and the other. Gave him one of these scripts for Big Lebowski, and he's like, Tony, he's like, I want you to take this home, and I know you're a big fan of the movie. Dude, that thing is so well written that it's verbatim from every word and line of dialogue and
That's
pause
awesome.
and this, that, and the other when you watch it. And I'm watching it and just kind of thumbing through and going with it. And it's like, dude, there is like no ad lib happening whatsoever. Like,
Really?
it's
Yeah.
so accurately written by the Coen brothers where it's just like,
Yeah.
that's incredible. Like, I can only hope to write like that one day where it's just like,
I can imagine. Yeah.
it's so good.
when they
It's
write,
so good.
when they write together, they
And you
dictate
know,
to each
oh,
other.
yeah.
and that's funny that you just like the fact that you just said that it kind of makes sense because when you think about all their movies, they don't hire comedians or improv actors.
They're seasoned
they're
actors. They're
phenomenal
trained
actors, which it makes complete sense that like obviously they're creating some seriously amazing dialogue, and these actors are like memorizing it and performing
That's why
it
everyone
and
wants to work with them.
and doing a great phenomenal performance because like you're right, like the Coen brothers, man.
There's one more thing I'll say
love
about
Coen brothers.
before we move on because I could talk about the Coen
Yeah.
brothers all day.
Oh, yeah.
Right
Oh.
there. It's just like I always loved in that movie. I started noticing it like probably the 70th time I watched it in college, drunk it like an idiot or something. Is that like it's like every time the dude like he hears something from somebody like on TV or somebody says something to him or whatever, he like repeats it like 2 scenes later. So it's like in the
never
beginning
noticed
when
that.
the president George H.W. Bush is like this aggression will not stand. Then like 2 scenes,
You're right.
yeah, 2 scenes later,
Oh my
this
God.
aggression will not stand, man. You know, like it's like and then like
I've
somebody
never
else is
noticed
saying,
Oh my God, neither have I.
I gotta go back and watch that
I have
tonight.
to watch it right now. That's amazing.
and then like somebody else is saying something
aggression
in
will
that
not
scene, and then
stand.
he'll repeat it later, and so it's just like
See, back to Coen brothers, man.
I'm all like Blues Brothers,
Sergio, get with it.
I guess there's a pathology to my appreciation of this
I
kind
do
of
want-
comedy, but it's like all this ridiculous stuff happens around the main character who doesn't care.
Yeah.
He's like oblivious to the ridiculous shit happening
Yeah.
around him.
I do want to make one comment with everything you said, like, or make one comment to the beginning of the stuff you said, which was you referred to it as the Indiana Jones trilogy, and I'm assuming you did that with intention, as in, as in,
I didn't even catch that. Yeah, there are 4 movies.
Not the Crystal Skull.
You know, some people are gonna be surprised by this, but I don't hate that movie.
Okay.
I just kind of like it.
But the original trilogy is
No, but it doesn't. It just
Yeah.
doesn't belong.
There's
to
a
that.
trilogy.
Yeah, you're right. It
Because the
doesn't-
first
it doesn't
three
belong
are
to
that perfect, and then it's like that one's just sort of there, and it's
Yeah.
entertaining.
I like Crystal Skull the way I like Star Wars Episode 3.
Yeah,
The
okay.
Revenge of the
Okay.
Sith. You know.
Fair enough,
Where it's
fair
like
enough.
it's not as good as the old ones, but
Yeah.
this is okay.
yeah.
It's not as bad. as
You
everybody
wanted more,
Wishes it
and
was.
you got it, but it wasn't,
Yeah.
and you knew it wasn't going to be as
It's
good.
a little off.
So
Yeah.
I shot you guys a text over the weekend, I believe.
Yeah, you did.
I was
Yeah.
I was in Wisconsin at this hunting lodge, and it was great. It was the eve of my birthday, and they had an old TV there, and they had a lot of old movies. And they actually had a VHS player there, and it came down to it. And I actually saw it. They actually had Stand by Me on DVD. I'm like, it was like 10:30 at night, so I'm like, you know what? Nobody else is around. Nobody else is doing anything. I want to watch a movie to bring in my birthday. I'm gonna have a little cocktail, watch a movie, you know. And they had Stand By Me on DVD, and then right next to it, I looked, Raiders of the Lost Ark on VHS. I'm like, how do I not do this right now?
Inglorious 4-3.
That's just all like just a handful of nostalgia right there. I'm like, boom, put it in, and I actually I put it in. It picked up midway through the movie. I actually had to rewind the damn thing, which was just threw me back way.
Ah,
you know, yeah.
Please be
fine.
kind.
That's
Please be
fine.
kind.
Right,
Yeah.
right. They weren't kind. They weren't kind, right? So I rewound it. And, yeah, I'm watching Raiders of the Lost Ark on VHS. Just absolutely awesome. But anyway, I had to share that story really quick.
So I kind of already did this.
You did, yeah.
You
so
know,
are you gonna go with
well, it's
Eternal
funny.
Sunshine?
It's
or do
funny
you have another
because I'm sitting here now again, and we're thinking again.
Hey, I recapped my Citizen Kane, so I gave my reason
But I
behind
mean,
it.
one? Joe, we could go around probably 5 or 6 times.
Right,
Yeah.
because I rattled off those other ones that are the ones that I just sit and watch and, you know, whatever. Like, I'll stop what I'm doing and watch The Goodfellas, Tombstone, The Rocks of the World.
Absolutely.
Then I got Eternal Sunshine of Spotless Mind, and there was some others that popped in my head now, and I, like, well, The Icing, of course.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, if that's not a comfort movie for everybody, I don't know what is.
Dude, that is an uncomfortable movie for me to watch.
Like who?
And again, like
I'm naked.
in a similar sense to Garden State, they have Silver Linings Playbook was always another one for me that struck that same kind of chord. But I think this time it's like because we kind of touched on Eternal Sunshine already and whatever. But I thought of this when he'd mentioned the trilogy. I thought of the Kevin Smith films. Your Clerks, Mallrats, Chasing Amy. Those three in particular.
Yeah.
Because
Do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite out of those three? That's a tough pick.
It is. I think out of the three, my favorite's Mallrats.
Okay.
I'll second
That's
that.
probably mine too.
I know a lot of people love Chasing Amy. Mallrats is just a fun one where I'm like,
I'm a
that's
Clerks
fun.
guy. I'm a Clerks
Chasing
guy.
Amy.
I'm a Clerks guy too. I was gonna
See,
say I love that. I love
Chasing
Clerks.
Amy has
I love
more of
Clerks.
that whole story and you're learning something at the end. And the other ones,
Well, that's because he was learning something as we went. It is cool about Clerks where it's just sort of rough around the edges and it's like, this kid got this
it's
opportunity.
great.
And then Mallrats, it's like you got the
Dude,
opportunity
he
again
didn't
and
get
the budget.
opportunity.
Yeah.
He made
Right.
his
No,
opportunity.
he didn't
Give
get
him
it.
credit. Yeah.
He used up his credit cards.
And
Yeah.
he was shooting that overnight.
I love that story.
Clerks, he was shooting like overnight, like when the store was closed and stuff like that. It was just, but yeah, I just love their movies and I love that they're tied in too. The characters.
They're the same universe.
Was the View Askew universe or something is what they call it.
View
right?
Askew universe.
View Askew universe.
But yeah, I mean, and I know like Clerks and Mallrats. I know all the like the jokes and the lines, and and it's just I've loved them for 20 years.
Yeah, it's fun.
You know,
Were those his first three too? Like right out of the
it was
gate?
those three. Yeah, it was those
Man,
three.
that's
The first three.
It's like three just
Yeah.
churning them out, right?
Yeah.
Right, one after another. That's awesome.
But it's funny because I feel like too at the time they came out, they weren't like blockbusters. Weren't anything huge. They gathered like a cult following.
No, it did
And
well
he
at some
kinda-
festivals, and then it was all cult. And
Right,
it
it
was
was
built
cult
him up.
following
He was
for a
big
long
at the
time.
Comic Cons and stuff like that.
Right.
If there's any readers out there, do yourselves a favor. Read the book Spike, Mike, Slackers, and Dykes, and it's by the author's name is Mark Pearson or Mike Pearson. He's actually the rep from Miramax who was one of the guys who discovered.
I'm guessing Spike Lee.
Yeah.
So it's all the indie
It's
guys,
all
the
these,
directors.
like basically.
That's cool.
So he was a Miramax rep. He's the one who went out and he found all of these directors.
Oh, wow.
Well, he goes into a lot about Clerks and all of that, and Kevin Smith.
Who's
and,
Mike? Sorry, Spike Mike. I'm just curious about the title.
Spike, Mike's like Mike Meyer or Mike.
What
What
was
am I
the-
saying? The whole Flint, Michigan documentary. God, why am I forgetting?
You know what? I'm not gonna lie. I like '90s youth movies better than I like '80s youth movies.
Okay.
Because '80s youth movies were either like suburban kids with suburban problems that fell in love, like in John Hughes or whatever, that probably had parents that voted for Reagan or whatever, and then you had like the anti-Reagan movies, which were trying to like spit in the face of the establishment or something and say like we're like the new people or whatever. And it's like I appreciate both those types of things, but I'm just a kid of the '90s. Like I was a teenager in the '90s, so like it's like Bill Clinton was president. The economy was great. Everything was fine. There really wasn't much to rebel against. So it was more like instead of like let's learn about life, man. It was more like. No, let's work at a record store and break shit. It was like more Beavis and Butthead, irreverent, and like just pointless. Like there's just a pointlessness to '90s youth comedy that I'd find funny. And then there's stuff like Reality Bites where it's like
Michael Moore, thank you.
Michael Moore.
And I was gonna say that because like it came to me while JT was actually saying something hilarious about the whole like '90s. There's really you're right. That's how we ended up with what's the Epic Record or Empire Record? Empire Record. Like, that's how you end up with movies like that.
Yeah. Right. And
That's
then
a
like I
very good
said,
point.
Reality Bites tried to like make it seem like we're fighting for something real, and it's like no, you're not. Get out of here.
Well, that's why you end up with movies like Single White Female because it's like, all right, well, we might as well talk about some girls
That's why Mom
doing
You're gonna have to have
the.
some sort of struggle.
Okay, we're
gonna
totally.
end on that.
Okay.
Kid Rock remakes Single White Female. And that's what's gonna happen next.
starring Sergio as
Anyway.
a female.
It was. I will say it was comforting talking to you guys.
Well said. Well
So
said.
let's cheers it out.
That was stupid.
Cheers.
You know what? I don't think I've ever uttered
And
those words.
I've never hated me more as well until now. But you know what? Thank you everybody for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. You know, we talked about comfort films, and let us know some of your comfort films when you have a chance. But anyway, guys, a lot of fun. We'll catch you on the next one. Cheers, everybody. All right, well, that's going to do it for episode 3 of 2 Drink Minimum. Hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. It was definitely a fun one for sure. A lot of good conversation to be had there. And join us. We got another podcast coming at you later on in December. Possibly 1 or 2 in between there. But we definitely got one coming up where the whole gang is together again talking about holiday films. And that's going to be another fun one for you guys, we think. So go ahead and give that a listen. Until then, this has been 2 Drink Minimum. We've been drinking, thinking, talking shop. Thank you again, and cheers, everybody.